Call the member for Burleigh.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Surely there are few honours as great as rising in this place to represent one's community. To do so on this first occasion is, of course, humbling, and yet I am overcome with a keen sense of anticipation, knowing that there is work to be done. For me, politics has always been about the art of the possible, and community service, the fulfilment of potential. This Parliament, a gift of our Western traditions and forebears, is the nexus between the two. It is a place of debate and a place of decision. It is where matters are settled and the government is stirred to action. I intend to use my time in this place constructively, faithfully representing the community of Burleigh while holding fast to the values learned from my family, earned by experience and reinforced through a career of community service. Mr Deputy Speaker, above all, I hope to repay a debt of gratitude and honour the opportunities Queensland gave me, a two-time migrant who arrived on the Gold Coast to chase a better future. My journey here was not straightforward and relied on my parents and grandparents taking extraordinary leaps of faith. To explain my values and share my stories, I need to share some of theirs. And let me begin with my grandfather. Toward the end of the Second World War, my grandfather was a young boy living in a rural town in southern Sicily. Liberation was at hand, but the moment was chaotic and desperate. One day, my grandfather, Francesco Bellavia, set off on foot with his father and others to the provincial capital of Agrigento. They carried eggs they hoped to trade with the Americans. Along the way, they were beset by bandits who wanted their goods and their lives. Shots were fired, and in the panic, everyone ran toward the safety of home. Everyone, but my grandfather. Despite the danger and the uncertainty, he ran towards Agrigento and the opportunity to provide for his family. He made the trade and bravely returned home with those provisions. There is much more I could share about his courage and love of family, but suffice to say, he took every opportunity to work, and when there was no work, he created his own opportunity. In time, that saw him recruited to work in the mines of South Africa. Beginning without a skerrick of English and little education, he worked for 5 years to send money back home. He returned to Sicily to marry my grandmother, Antonia, before she too, pregnant with my mother, made the arduous journey to South Africa to help build a new life. I was born in Boksburg, South Africa, to my parents Hermann and Anna. It was a turbulent time in that country, but both my parents moved mountains to provide a better future for me and my brother Frank. They took risks by starting businesses in unfamiliar industries, putting their little capital on the line. When times were lean, they made deep personal sacrifices, but always kept going. Enterprise for them was never for its own sake. Our family unit was their project, and in 1994, they made the decision to walk away from what they had built and start again for the sake of their children. We arrived in Auckland, New Zealand in the middle of a rainy night. There was no one waiting for us and everything felt alien. The closest I've ever come to describe that period was to say it felt like experiencing a small death, only to find a new life. With no social security net, my parents would yet again take responsibility for our family by putting everything on the line to start yet another business. My father saw a gap in the market, and with no engineering background whatsoever, he designed, developed and manufactured an underfloor heating system. At first, it was just him, a trailer and the brochures he printed on his inkjet printer. Mum handled the books and administration, and my brother and I helped by packing boxes, spooling cable by running up and down our driveway, and at times, even with installations. The smell of drying concrete, sawdust and wet clay on those countless building sites will be with me forever. I count myself lucky to have seen the dignity of hard physical work. Mr Deputy Speaker, I also saw the other side of the construction industry. The power imbalance between large builders and small contractors, all too often used as cheap lines of credit. Regulations that put small businesses perpetually on the back foot, and rent seekers that claim to speak for industries but do not speak for those with the most on the line. Even as a child, I felt the injustice of it all, and here in this place, I will do something about it. To help those mums and dads providing for their kids, for the young tradies going out on their own, and for goodness sake, to help ease the pressure on home prices. Looking back, only now do I realise how hard it must have been for my own parents to break new ground and juggle so much. For years, we walked on bare concrete in a home with no paint on the walls and where the TV stood on milk crates, so my parents could balance the family budget and focus on trying to get ahead. Their sacrifices paid off, their businesses grew, and eventually they began exporting enough product to Australia to justify another great leap of faith. In 2001, our family arrived from the Gold Coast. Like so many before, it was where we holidayed, but ultimately where we wanted to live. For my parents, they knew it was a place with excellent schools and on the doorstep of a much larger economy, which could offer my brother and I so much more. I started Year 11 at Somerset College, where I learnt Italian, and then quickly turned my mind to university and my own career. While studying IT was my goal, I had to get there under my own steam. In those days, fee help didn't exist. Modelling the example of my parents, I knew that hard work could overcome almost any obstacle, and I set out about securing a scholarship. Not only did I secure that scholarship, but so did a formidable young woman, Melissa, who would later become my wife. Mr. Speaker, education changed my life, and I believe in firmly giving parents choice and giving all children access to the best facilities to reach their potential, no matter their circumstances. While I graduated with degrees in IT and commerce and had plans to pursue a career in IT, I couldn't escape my roots, and so I joined my parents in that family business. In that crucible, I experienced both the joys of success and weathered times of deep disappointment. It was an education I could never have got from a textbook. It was in that season I began to appreciate the impact of government decisions on the economy and how the economy, in turn, impacted families just like ours. In the early 2000s, Australia felt safe, confident and relaxed, and I felt no doubt that the Howard government would be returned. Election night in 2007 came as a personal reckoning. I learned democracy was not a spectator sport, it demanded full participation, and nothing could be taken for granted. Just days later, I joined the then Liberal Party and was hooked. Politics was the answer to the question I was reaching for my whole life. The rest, as they say, is history. With my parents' blessing, I left the family business and accepted a position with then Moncrieff MP Steve Chobo. I volunteered where there was need and ran campaigns and finally rose to become the Young LNP president. Shortly after the 2012 election, I was ready for a new challenge and accepted a role with the City of Gold Coast in a community engagement position and later as a media advisor. It was a privilege to provide advice, but I was eager to draw on my experiences and find ways of serving my city directly. To speak up on behalf of small and family businesses, I was appointed to the CCIQ Policy Committee for the Gold Coast. There, I championed the reduction of red tape and fought for our fair share of infrastructure. And to keep our families safe, in our first home, I led efforts to expand Neighbourhood Watch into our area and worked with some incredible people to help found Gold Coast District Neighbourhood Watch Incorporated. My own leap of faith came not at all, and then all at once. In 2015, with a mortgage and 2 very young children, I resigned from council so that I could attempt to become a councillor myself, because there were things that I wanted to fix, things I wanted for my community, and as I'd learnt, I couldn't achieve any of that as a spectator. It was an extraordinary risk to take on a 25-year incumbent, and I was hoping to be the youngest ever councillor elected on the modern Gold Coast City Council. For 7 months, I walked the streets with my friends and volunteers. And as fate would have it, on 2 occasions, our new Premier even lent a hand distributing flyers. That campaign left me an utterly changed man and upended some of my youthful political sensibilities. I'd started that journey sharing my vision, but I quickly found the best ideas were found at the doors. I learned the role of representation is not to remake a community, but to speak up for it, champion it, fight for it, and enliven its aspirations. That means listening more than speaking and then doing what you say. Serving as the Division 11 councillor was an incredible honour, and so was my re-election in 2020. I did not agree with every decision of council, but I always respected my colleagues and their role sharing responsibility. Together we achieved great things, and I hope the Gold Coast was left a better place for my time at council. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, while local government and state governments are notionally separate, in truth, they're pretty tightly coupled and codependent. And from the inside of council, I saw a bad state government missing opportunities to deliver outcomes by handpicking its stakeholders and ignoring those most invested in the Gold Coast, locals. I found it cruel and enraging. And it wasn't just me. The community too could sense something was broken and that they were paying the price. They were raising it with me all the time. In Burleigh, much of which I represented as a local councillor, frustration reached boiling point on the issues of policing, housing and the environment. The community wanted change, but I knew it couldn't be taken for granted. I would need to make change happen. In October 2023, I was pre-selected by the LNP to succeed retiring MP Michael Hart, who I consider a great friend and a champion for the Southern Gold Coast, as is his wife, Sally. I retired from council and embarked on a mission to knock on every single door to hear from locals about their priorities. It was gruelling, but joyous. The blisters and the sunburns were badges of honour. I heard from those in the pits of despair and the evergreen optimists. Every story, every person left an impression on me. They painted a picture of an ambitious, protective community with a deep connection to their natural areas, a profound love of family and a desire to knit together a recognisable community in the face of population growth. My mind and my heart were shaped by thousands of conversations, and I want the community to know that I will muster every ounce of strength and draw on all of my experience to represent them. My foremost priority will be delivering on our commitment to establish a permanent physical police presence in Burleigh to deal with antisocial behaviour in the daytime and prevent nighttime violence that puts too many lives at risk. I want to thank the Premier for visiting Burleigh to understand these issues, and also to the Minister for Police and the Treasurer for supporting a commitment to action that meets locals' expectations. Mr Deputy Speaker, I also intend to reclaim the conservative tradition of conserving and caring for our environment. Locally, that means working with the Minister for the Environment to restore the Burleigh Heads National Park, the nearby conservation areas and planning for the future of Tallebudgera Creek. These are sacral places and the upkeep has been at times disgraceful. I'm proud that we're committed to supercharging the work of volunteers and to delivering a wildlife bridge over the busy Gold Coast Highway. Mr Deputy Speaker, we are amid a housing crisis. Pensioners have been pushed to breaking point, families have been torn apart chasing affordable rents, and young people have all but abandoned the Australian dream. The former government abandoned Burleigh when it walked away from the amendments to the Gold Coast planning scheme and exacerbated the misery of good people by holding out false hope. The partnership with local government must be reset to deliver sorely needed housing. However, there must be another partnership, and that is with the community, which is best placed to guide outcomes. I'm grateful to the Deputy Premier for visiting Burleigh to meet with locals who want to see consultative long-term planning that delivers housing for those who need it and the infrastructure to support them. And Mr Deputy Speaker, to underscore the point, that is precisely the approach I will adopt for major transport infrastructure. These projects touch lives, impact businesses and change futures. Locals are the greatest stakeholders in their futures, And I'm committed, in the great Conservative tradition, to ensuring that they are the centre of decision-making. Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to acknowledge that while I am standing here, my place was earned by the contributions and sacrifices of many. I owe so much to my family, my friends, my mentors, my volunteers, and the leadership of the Liberal National Party. To the Premier, thank you for your counsel and your guidance over many years. You are a model of servant leadership, and your ambition for Queensland will lift us to new heights. When I was just a first-time council candidate, you were there, letterboxing Varsity Lakes with me, and then again taking the time to share an espresso with my grandparents around the dinner table. You care about people, and I'm grateful to play but a small part supporting the government you lead. To the LNP President, Lawrence Springborg, and LNP State Director, Ben Riley, thank you for running a principled, values-driven campaign in very trying circumstances. You were ably assisted by Michael Nagarovich, Stephen Mamarella, Sam Jackson, Jock Power, and the entire Secretariat team. And on the Gold Coast, by Trent Belling. To my own campaign team, thank you for surrendering a year of your own lives to help give Burleigh a voice in a new government. Rita Fellows, Doug Anderson, Ben Dillaway, Greg Ingram, Leon Rebello, Rhys McFarlane, Rob Clark, Cormac Anning, and David Rogers, thank you. And to my friends in the rough and tumble of politics, Stephen Chobo, and the incisive Fadden MP Cameron Caldwell, his lovely wife Lauren, Jack Piggott, Carly Abbott, Kyle Chaplin, and Gary Mays, thank you for your wise counsel. To Christian Marlowe, who was there for the hundreds of kilometres walked and the bleary-eyed mornings, thank you. You are a dear friend, and I wish you every success in your next chapter. And to Brett Nordstrom, thank you, mate. You were right there from the start and responsible for opening this world to me. Mr Deputy Speaker, my greatest thanks are to my wife and to our Melissa and to our 3 young children, Lucia, Herman and Maxwell. Melissa, you are an incredible woman and the best partner I could have asked for. You are just, you are compassionate, you are discerning, and you are by far the best judge of character I know.
Very well put. Yeah, brownie point there.
It is a blessing that we found each other so early in life and have been able to grow together as we have both grown up. I love you. And to Lucia, Herman and Maxwell, I want you to know that your mum and I love you more than anything in this world. This work may take me away from you from time to time, but just know that it is to give you and your children a better future. Now, Mr Speaker, finally, I want to close by acknowledging that parliamentary representation can be a tough game. Tough on ourselves, our families, and our communities. Tough on each other. But I firmly believe this institution is a force for good. And so, even when the times are tough, I will hold to the words in Paul's letter to the Romans. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and an endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Mr Deputy Speaker, let us all shoulder the burden of this calling, this vocation, so that together we may all give Queensland hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. I call the member for Logan.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, on Christmas Day 2023, a great storm struck the southern parts of Logan, and the member for Scenic Rims here for the northern parts of his